So as we saw, Blender's data is organized in so-called data blocks, each of a different type. So it could be a mesh, could be a material, as a camera, etc. So here we have a simple scene, a cube with a red material, which we can see over here. And let's say we duplicate this cube. Now the second cube also has the red material assigned. And one way we can see that is this over here, near the material name, there's this 2. And this means the number of users of this particular material block. So there's 2 users, 2 cubes. Now suppose that we add another material. We'll create a new one. We'll call it blue. Make it a little bit blue to see. So now we got 1 cube in red, 1 in blue. And the 2 has disappeared. And whenever you don't see the number next to the name in this case, it means that there's only a single user of this material data block. And we can see that in the outliner as well. So blue cube uses the blue material, the red cube uses the red material. But if we then switch over this blue cube to use the red material, and we now see that the red material is now using, again, has 2 uses, and we check the material list, we can see a 0 next to the blue. And what that means is that the blue material data block in this case has no longer any users, which is true because it's no longer used in the scene. But now if we save this file, let's say we just save it to this. So if we then reload the file, we don't want to save this, we want to reload it. So we still got our scene, but if we check the material list, we can see now that the blue material has disappeared. So what Blender does whenever you save a file is to save only those data blocks that are actually being used within the scene or the whole file or the whole session, if you like. So our blue material has now disappeared because it had no uses. And this is not always what you want. Sometimes you'd like to have a couple of choices in materials, for example. You might use a few of them, but not all within the scene, but you'd like to save them all. So what can you do? Well, let's try to recreate our blue material once again. We'll not use it on this cube, so it's now back to 0 users. What we can do is we can press this little shield icon over here for the blue. And now if we select once again red on these cubes, we can see there's a little F next to the blue. And that means it has a fake user. And what this does is that it protects this data block, this material data block, from getting purged when the file is saved. So even though it has no actual users within the scene in this case, it does get saved. And we can check that. We'll save the file again, reload it, check the material list, and you can see that the blue one is still there. Now another way to inspect this is to go into the outliner and change its mode to this orphan data mode. If we check the materials here, our blue material is listed as an orphan data block, means it has no uses. But we can also see that the shield is checked, so it still has 1 user, which is this fake user. And if we alter our scene, for example, to use the blue material, you can see that it disappears from the orphan data view because it's now actually being used. So one thing that you probably have been using is this little X over here, which is where you delete, in this case, the material from this cube. But actually it does not delete, because what it does, it simply removes the link between, in this case, the mesh and the material. So the red material is still here, as you can see. The blue one is also. It's no longer used within the scene, so both of these blocks have become orphan. And they're still listed within the material list, but the red one has 0 users. So if we now save this file, red would not be saved, the blue one would still be saved. So in this way, when you click this little X, it doesn't actually delete the data. That only happens when the file gets saved, and merely gets rid of the link between the mesh and the block. So there's one final thing to show here. For example, if we have this red material is being used by these 2 cubes, there's the little 2 again. Now you can press this 2 to make a copy of that material, which is a single user copy. And if we go back to the regular outliner view, we can see we've got now 2 red materials, the red and the red 001. The 001 one is a copy of the original one, but they both have only a single user. And that's what this 2, this number, does when you click on it. So that's an easy way to make a copy of something that's being used by multiple meshes, for example. Make a single user copy that you can then edit in any way that you like, while it still preserves the original data block that you had.